Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. Welcome for the element 4 of NEBOSH Process Safety Management. And the element 4 is all about relevant to fire and explosion protection. How we gonna implement or design a fire prevention or protection system, and of course to avoid from certain kind of explosions, especially the major explosion. Since this process safety management is designed especially for the high hazardous industries. So of course, it will be helping to all of us to understand how the fire protection or prevention system or explosion prevention system we can design for our business operations. Now, there are again, the quite easily understandable some of the learning outcomes. You must be capable, as 4.1 is all about explain fire and explosion hazards related to process industries. 4.2 is all about outline appropriate control measures to minimize the effects of fire and explosion in the process industries. The third outcome is how it does have the potential to explode and commonly used control measures adopted to prevent and minimize explosion. And also we're going to discuss about some of the emergency plan and requirements for the implementation related to the purpose and the features of emergency response plan. Again, different kind of fire or explosion hazards. So, and as I told earlier, also in all three modules that, there are sub elements of every master element, like element 4 also have 4 sub elements like fire hazards, fire and explosion controls, explosions, and emergency preparedness. So let's start with 4.1 to understand what kind of fire hazards can be there. And as usual, there is a question for all of you to, it's a food for thought. What heat sources and fuel do you have in your organization? So think about it, and then think about the processes, the materials, or any sort of reason you believe could be available as a heat source or the fuels in your organization. So fire triangle is all about heat, oxygen, and fuel. This is the fire triangle, and chemical reaction is mandatory. Then fire will be there for sure. So the modes of heat transfer mentioned in the NEBOSH theories is all about conduction, convection, and radiation. It's a very much important slide, I would say, because in the PSM exam, surely they will ask probably one question, for to see either you understand all three important mode of heat transfer, like conduction, convection, and radiation. So conduction is all about transfer through solid material. So remember the word solid material. Okay. Transfer through solid material. So heat transfer through solid material. Now convection. What is convection? So it's hot fluids rise and cold fluids saying, as this happens, heat is spread upward from the seat of the fire. So it's a convection. So when the hot fluid rise and cold fluid sink, actually, it's relevant to fluids, right? So radiation is heat transfer of radiation energy from hot objects. So remember, conduction belongs to the solid materials, convection belongs to the hot fluids, and radiation is all about the radiant energy from the hot objects. Now, the typical ignition sources in the process industry, many examples including like smoking, sparks, naked flames, oxygen settling welding, or process involvement like electrical discharges, arc welding, hot surfaces could be there, and mechanical friction, and lightning. And see the flammable explosion range. Too lean, explosive, and too much. That means you need to understand the UEL or LEL, the volume from 0 to 100%. So this is the flammability band. So we need to understand how this LEL or UEL would be adding terrible value into the process. Now, the types of jet fires, let's discuss. The jet fires is all about mechanism like continuous directed spray of fuel ignited immediately, gas, liquid, or vapors. Consequences is blowtorch, jet of flame, radiated heat can explode. So remember, if they ask any question related to the jet fires, you need to remember the mechanism and the consequences. Now, the pool fire, how it looks like. Mechanism, spillage of liquid fuel can be on water, vapor, ignite over pool or above pool. Consequences may flow if not contained, and unburned fuel may form a vapor cloud which can explode. Now, this is another important slide to understand boiling liquid expanding vapors cloud explosion, like BLEVE. BLEVE. Typical mechanism is external jet fire attacks. Tank walls heat up, liquid boils, PRV operates, vessel weakens, crack develops, catastrophic vessel rupture, even rapid depressurization of superheated content could of fine droplets formed, and consequences, missiles, fireball, secondary explosion could be there. So boiling liquid expanding vapor cloud explosion, and he might be create a question. BLEVE stands for what? We will give certain options, and confined vapor cloud explosion in a confined area. So you can quite easily understand the confined vapor cloud explosion is all about mechanism flammable vapors built up within the building or within the vessel, and ignition occurs. Consequences, shock waves, overpressure, heat, and missiles. Now, another UVCE stands for what? Unconfined vapor cloud explosion. He can create a question. So mechanism is flammable vapors ignited before it disperses. Consequences could be shock waves, overpressure, heat, etc. Now, these were the types of different fire hazards. So let's talk about the fire explosion controls. How we have to control now. First of all, there must be some leak detectors because it's a process industry. So we need some detectors, sensors, some certain kind of devices, which will help us in detection of any problem. So in the operation for gas vapors leaks, chemical sensors with alarm, initiate investigation or shutdown, manual or automatic would be there. Support and line detectors would also help. Spot detectors or line detectors, localized detectors installed at a specific point, only isolated area may be covered. Line detectors, we can have long cable is installed, which can detect heat along its length. Large area can be covered also. So you can have further research, how the spot or line detectors work actually. So go to YouTube, have some research. I want you to develop your researching hobby, your passionate learning hobby. Don't expect that everything I'm gonna tell her within these 3-4 hours, right? Now, smoke detectors, operation smoke enters chamber, light or radiation beam disrupted, alarm sounds. Operation could be like flickering or radiation emitted by fire. Okay, so detected by sensor like visible UV, ultraviolet, or IR detectors or alarm sounds. Active and passive systems can also be used for controlling. Like active fire protection is all about equipment, systems, and methods. This is another important point to understand, an important slide to remember. Like what is active and passive systems and what is the difference between them. And active system is all about equipment, systems, and methods which following initiation, like initiating or may be used to control, mitigate, and extinguish fire. Passive fire protection is coating and cladding arrangements, which is in the event of fire will provide thermal protection to restrict the rate at which heat is transmitted to the object or area being protected. So there is a standard reference like BN ISO 13702 1999. It will give you some idea about active and passive systems. Now, what is passive fire protection? Is preformed boards like cladding, wall linings, fire-resistant materials, bound into cement, fabricated walls, partitions, fire doors, etc. Structures made in a factory to be assembled on site, and spray coatings like into cement or coating separate into the structure, steel works, etc. And seals and sealants can also be used like intumescent steels prevent the spread of the smoke and fire. We have active fire protection system like sprinklers, gas extinguisher, but make sure they are well installed and the sensors are good working. At a certain point, sprinkler or water form or heat triggers release cools or the smoother fires, gas extinguishing, inert gas, smoothest fire need regular testing and maintenance and can be manual or automatic. Hazardous area classification is one of the most important slide I would say. So you just need to understand how you're gonna, give a zone number to the flammable vapors area or to the flammable dust areas. Like if a zone 0, that means the flammable vapors. If you see zone 0 somewhere, so you need to remember PC. That means the flammable vapors present continuously. And if you see zone 1, that means PO. That means present occasionally in normal operations. And if you see zone 2, it means flammable vapors present for short duration and not in normal operations. So 0, 1, 2, these are zone numbers for flammable vapors we can classify. But flammable dust, we have to go for zone 20, like present continuously. And 21 is all about present occasionally in normal operations. And 22 is present for short duration, not in normal operations. So you need to understand and remember 0, 1, 2 zone numbers, what does that mean? And 20, 21, and 22 zone numbers related to flammable dust means what? Look at this example. We have zone 1, we have zone 0, we have zone 1, we have zone 0. To understand this circle. Now, what is the solution then? Equipment for use in flammable atmospheres. We can go with electrical and mechanical, like ATEX approved. Electrical equipment categories for category 1 used in all zones, and category 2 used in zone 1 and 21, and zone 2 and 22, and category 3 used in zone 2 or 22 only. So remember that one, equipment for use in flammable atmospheres. No, explosion protection systems like atmosphere control, maintaining an atmosphere not in flammable range, pressure relief and explosion venting, like design weak points in system. Intentionally, you need to design it. Automatic suppression detects pressure rise and inject inert media also. Explosion protection system, automatic isolation, detect pressure rise, cut off supply, flame arresters, fine mesh, or even cools a flame as it passes through. Remember guys, we can also use chemical foam and inert gas systems, which will help, like chemical systems like dry powder, inert powder, smoothest fire, effective on jet and running pool fires and can reignite, but messy causes fire. When foam and inert gas, for foam, water-based foam, smoothest fires, good for pool fires, not on jet fires. Remember, you need to remember the foam is not good for jet fires. Can reignite if foam's layer is broken. Inert gas removes oxygen and smoothers and asphyxiant, so needs stringent control. So stringent control is important here. Fire protection for tank forms, like water monitors, high volume water cannon, fixed or portable, sprinklers. Again, we need to inbuild everything in the design phase, and deluge system, high volume sprinklers, cool and shield weather. Look at the mitigation of lightning strike with the lightning rod and the wire, and we make it grounding in another way around. The ground rod. Hopefully this, the diagram will be giving you a clear understanding. Because sky lightning, of course, is a terrible hazard. So lightning rod attached to the highest point connected to the earth rod by cable, direct the electrical discharge to the earth. Now let's talk about the dust explosion. It's all about 4.3, element 4, fire and explosion protection of process safety management, training of NEBOSH. Now, why does explosion occur? Because there is a dust pentagon, like, ignition, oxygen, confinement, fuel, dispersion. The primary and secondary explosions. Primary explosion, initial explosion within the process may disturb lying dust in the RON. Secondary explosion often much larger, involve dust stirred up by the primary explosion. So in the secondary explosion, it involved the dust. Now, prevention of dust explosions. How are we going to prevent? Risk assessment is mandatory. Identify hazard risk and control. Eliminate dust at source. Example like faster paste rather than powders. Inerting nitrogen blankets is important. Dust extraction, minimize fugitive releases. Control of ignition sources, zoned areas is important. Mitigation of dust explosion, explosion relief venting, we can use direct pressure to a safe location, minimize damage, explosion suppression and containment, contain pressure and vessels. So each point technically must be designed well. Suppress explosion using intermediate. Now, planting, siting, and construction locate in open air or away from occupied areas. Build of weak vent panels rather than heavy constructions. So again, it's a design phase. So the last one is all about emergency preparedness. How we have to react in case of fire emergency, or who will do what in case of emergency. How our firefighters will respond, the fire wardens or the firefighters, the fire watchers, and most importantly, how our emergency rescue team members will be reacting on it. So what is the purpose of an emergency plan? What is the purpose? To control and manage a response to foreseeable emergencies. That is the purpose of emergency plan. Now, how are we going to develop of an emergency plan? What are the key points? Remember, first of all, it's a legal requirement. Identify possible foreseeable scenarios and response required. Select people on-site and off-site to develop the plan and determine resources needed. Evaluate external emergency response and consider on-site and off-site medical response even. Identify if an off-site plan is needed. What foreseeable scenarios might your organization need to cover? So think about your organization and see how the foreseeable scenarios you might need to consider for your organization as a proactive approach. Now, foreseeable emergencies, no doubt, in most of the organization depends on make sure you have first aid medical, fire explosion, loss of containment like toxic release, bomb threat, terrorist incident, outbreak of disease, flooding or adverse weather. So these are foreseeable emergencies examples. So accordingly, you need to prepare your emergency response plan and make sure it is well practiced, because practice makes a man perfect. Your employees must be capable to respond against these emergencies. Now, specialists to develop the plan. On-site, we need engineers, workers, like process experts, specialists, health and safety, etc. Off-site, regulators, local authorities and councils, water companies and authorities, utility companies and emergency services, like including police and fire service. We need internal and external, all important stakeholders on board. You are establishing the on-site emergency plan for a chemical site. What resources do you think you might need to enable an effective emergency response? So think about, it's not like always just to study NEBOSH theories. You can have some, see your internal procedures, what they are telling you. But examples of resources, remember, you need emergency control room, first of all. You need first aid equipment. You need AED, automatic, device for artificial breathing and, for giving shock actually. And it also, if you are using AED, it will enhance 60% the survival chances of the victim. An AED and evacuation chair would also help. Spill response kits required, telephone and radio, site maps and drain plans and safety data sheets, computer and printer required. Availability of external emergency response. So we need on-site emergency first aid, usually adequate, may need additional responses, specialist hazards like chemicals, isolated locations, or long response times. On-site and off-site plans, make sure our plans might be required by law, even on-site developed and managed by the organization, off-site developed and managed and implemented by the authorities. So it's a two-way combination between public and private partnership. So companies have to work along with the concerned government authorities. Now, what is the content of an emergency plan? Depending on legal requirements, but to include systems for alerting and warning workers on site, neighboring facilities and emergency services, responsibilities in the event of an emergency, expertise of teams involved in response, internal and external, evacuation shelter arrangements, emergency shutdown of plant and services, consideration of vulnerable people, and systems for accounting for workers. So these are the content of an emergency plan. Now, information management and media liaison. So make sure you have information and communication channel like real-time information about the incident, chronological log, hazard information, casualty information, external reports to regulators, media liaison like need media training, and usually a prepared statement. So make sure you're not going any blind statement. So make sure you have somebody or a person who is responsible for external communication, especially with the media, because every word, whatever you are going to speak up, will definitely add negative or positive value into your organization. Now, theoretical training, yes, tabletop exercise can done, trainer-led exercises, carrier and accelerated time, discuss possible actions, respond in theory and identify deficiencies, competency of response team and commanders. Make sure you have incident commanders. They need leadership experience, knowledge, good communication skills. Team members, you need part of the site experience, practical skills, first aid. Firefighting and rescue team members must be part of this team. Now, practical testing of the response, you need, as I told you, the practice makes a man perfect. So fire emergency action drill, trigger alarm, test workers and response team, roll call and fire wardens, response team drill, practical mock-up scenarios, led by trainer, test actual response and full site response drill and full site of action has. So practice, practice, and practice. And see, undeclared, unannounced alarms should be there, and see the response of your all workers. No. Now, the provision of information to the public during normal operations, potential incidents or possible alarms or action to be taken. During an incident, you need like information on the event, action to be taken, and maybe assisted by authorities. So don't forget that, or don't be overconfident that you don't need to get involved the authorities. Otherwise, it will fire back. It's a legal requirement in some cases. So that was all about element 4, like fire hazard, fire and explosion control, dust explosion, emergency preparedness. This is what we discussed. You can have some notes on here. Because you can't remember everything, but at least try to understand and create some questions like me. I created some questions and I created some multiple options and start, practicing. Either I can choose the right answer, yes or no. The same challenges for you. Might be I'll prepare a separate video only for the question and answers related to process safety management for your support. But before that, I want you to watch all 4 videos and be prepared well in advance, proactively, even before you join any institute for NEBOSH PSM qualification. Okay, so all these questions and answers will help you. Most important, the question is important. Forget about the answers. Might be you can get the question and find out the answer from the presentation, or maybe you can WhatsApp. I can share, the process safety management books as well. 00966 59 890 3439. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for watching and for subscribing our channel. Just because of your motivation, I'm continuously working on it, and I'm trying to create a daily learning club for all of you, and hopefully you'll get something new every day at our channel, YouTube channel, Best International Training Zone. Okay, have a great day, have a great life. Keep me remembering your prayers. Be positive, be energetic, be passionate, be loyal and honest to your profession. Love your profession. Even if you don't like your company, don't love your company, at least love your profession. And remember, safety is one of the noblest profession in the world. It's like a ibadah. It's not like only for money making, right? Okay, goodbye. Thank you very much.